right? No, it's not like bouncing up gates. Well, you can do that, but what allows you to do that is bringing the frequency that you originally had when you were at wholeness and at 1 minute with the God Source consciousness field, bringing it back online with your atomic structure and your DNA, which transfigures the atomic structure progressively. You're supposed to when the DNA is working right, and then that takes you to the next density level up, and progressively you work yourself back out of density. That's what a natural evolutionary process is supposed to be, and it's supposed to be fun, not mutated, where you get stuck in density worlds like we are down here. Then you don't have to work so hard and have strange workshops at strange hours just to get your DNA to do what it was born to do in the first place. But anyway, these are the structures of ascension. These are cosmic structures. They are cosmic maps. Where you see circles, they're actually spheres. Spheres within spheres within spheres. Many, many balls within balls. And they are all literal coordinates. So we saw our galactic coordinates and our stack of coordinates coming down. And I can't remember it when I'm this tired. Here they are again. I'm good at it. I'm learning to write them down all over the place. So we have the Akasha I4, the Akasha A12, the Akasha 11, the Vecca 5, Universal Vecca 5, Metagalaxy. Right now we are in Metagalaxy 6. That is our local group. That is the center of our Metagalaxy would be the center of our local group of galaxies, what science calls the local group of galaxies. Then we have our galaxy. Now in April of 2009, we were in relation, we had just made the leap actually into the spirals, the crystal spirals that were running for Metagalaxy 6. So we actually jumped from Metagalactic 4 to Metagalactic 6, the alignment we had to have in order to even be able to align with, at this point in time, the monadic passages. Now, we entered Metagalactic 6 in alignment with Galaxy 1. We've been progressing through to the point where we need to align with Galaxy 3 in Metagalactic 6. And that's what we're beginning the process of doing now through this monadic passage opening. That will bring us into the frequencies that bring us into the 3 alignment. And I believe by March 15th, 16th, that is, I believe, I'll have to look at the map, but I'm pretty sure, the map that has the dates on it, the date map. But I believe it's March 15th, 16th is when we anchor in the 3 alignment, the galactic 3 alignment. And we're supposed to stay there until 2012 when the Amareya pass-through thing happens and we shift again. And what we're shifting is literally the alignment. If these currents are spiraling outward, and they're really materialization currents. If you're aligned with one set, it will have you and your planet and your solar system moving along one set of event horizons. Where if you're aligned with a different one, you will experience, in your solar system and your planet, etc., will experience another set of event horizons. We are attempting to align ourselves with the event horizons that allow for the natural ascension to continue, as a potentiality here, even though this has become a false system. So we're keeping the gates open with a lot of hard work from the beloveds and us, doing our best to hold them here. So there our stack there as far as our coordinate stack. And it's all about what spirals we are anchoring in, both personally and on a planetary level. If there's enough bodies, and it doesn't have to be head count as far as how many bodies, it's the quality of frequency those bodies are running that will determine whether there's enough quantum on the planet to hold those spirals and prevent a full activation of the 55 Metatronic. We have been working for 10 years. The people have been coming to the groups here, and they're coming from all over the place. There's people in all sorts of countries everywhere, and all ages and professions and all of that. And everybody that does has been activating piece by piece, light body, spirit body, one piece of anatomy after another, in order to bring in these frequencies. Right now, the amount of frequency that the average person who's been a couple years into this work is so far beyond the average person, no matter how smart or whatever high level, whatever they might have, even in Illuminati land down here. They can't run those kind of frequencies. The fields won't hold them because they haven't repaired any of the damage to the light body or the spirit body structures or the physical body structures. So we are a small group but we are powerful enough to anchor enough quantum to actually hold the gates open, which means stop the other spiral from dragging all of us into the Metatronic sequence and into the reversals that would take us fully into fall alignment. Fall alignment means being aligned with the black hole systems, that the inorganic black hole systems that are in Vecca 2 and are making wormhole connections through our metagalactic core, our Vecca core, our metagalactic core, and into our galactic core. Even our science here has discovered, yes, there's a black hole at the center of the Milky Way. Yeah. And that's not naturally occurring either. But anyway, so this is just to remind us of where those structures that we were looking at as random structures that aren't random, but they're like you could put them anywhere. You could put them on your own, in relation to your own body, or you could put them in relation to the cosmos. How these plug into the cosmos and the maps. Next one, please. Okay, spiral. Okay, over here. Yeah, I forgot to talk about the little one. Now, the natural crystal spiral would normally spiral in step-down frequency, right? Through there would be the big one that goes through the Akasha I level, the Akasha A body, and it would step down to the Akasha A and then to the Akashas. So all those crystal spirals, there would be, each level there'd be 12 smaller ones, and for each of the 12 domains, and that's only on the Itore side that I'm talking about, because actually there's 24, because there's the Adore side too. Right. But there's also this that is occurring, and this is what the black hole systems are running. This over here, honey, can we move this over a bit? Please, thank you. See, these are already published, and I think it's Sliders 4 that I've got these parts out of. So if you want, Sliders 4 is the program that deals with and explains all of those things well. So if you're new or something and you want to know more about that, Sliders 4 and 5 both dealt with that. But here is showing the different kind of spiral. This is showing this darker one here. This is a Metatronic spiral. It's also been, has numerous names, but they've been referring to it here as the Metatronic Death Star spiral harness. It is literally a set of frequencies that, by attaching certain particles to the natural core flows that are coming out of whichever level of the template, and this goes up quite high. It goes up to the Akasha level, I believe, but you don't have falls past that point. There's a certain point where you don't have conflict dramas like this, where there's still free will, but it's always used in service to the whole, where there is no division between a being does not experience the need to go against cosmic law in order to assert its independence. That only happens in the lower ones. In Vecca systems, you can have fallen Veccas, and you can have, you can have Akashas that have fallen Veccas within them. All right, the Akasha itself doesn't fall, the Akasha level. So anyway, we've got the fallen Akasha systems, Vecca systems, and the Akashas. They're interfacing with us. Here we have M31. This is where we're supposed to be, but we're actually a fragment galaxy, Milky Way fragmented out of M31, and I think it was in the Amsterdam workshop, we talked about that process and showed the diagrams on that. But we're actually out of alignment with the natural structures, the natural axes that we should be plugged into. We're tilted at a 23.5 degree angle instead of aligning naturally with the metagalactic core. And it's this problem that we talk about of having on Earth and in our solar system is much, much bigger. It has a history that goes back billions of years, and way before the Earth drama started, actually, before the Terra drama started. So we've talked about the history for eons, and I'm not going to go into the history of it now. But this spiral here, if you can tell in this little diagram, you'll see this closer up soon. In this little diagram, there's actually two spirals. The darker one is the Metatronic spiral, and the skinnier one in here, that's the natural unfolding crystal spiral. Chasing the crystal spiral. Right. So the crystal spiral is here. And these are all numeric expansion formula, basically. And we've talked about that at other times, and there's more comparisons, and Nola's done amazing work with that as far as defining what it is. There's a sequence of numbers that where the Fibonacci sequence or spiral goes, I think 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. It like eats the number before it, and to make it takes the number where it is, eats the one before it, and adds it to that one to get the next one. Where the crystal spiral expands on, I think like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 is a times 2, 64 is a times 2 expansion rate. And there's a lot, I'm not a math person, but there's a lot there's a lot of interesting information for math people in the comparison of those two spirals. And Noel Tobin has started doing those comparisons. But anyway, as far as visually, you get one spiral, the natural crystal spiral. It looks like it starts off smaller. And there's a certain point right over here. It's actually here that the point of influence starts at what would be axis 6, the natural six axis on the crystal spiral. And then by axis 7, that is when the crystal spiral, as it's trying to expand, the Metatronic one that's running as the harness outside of it, overtakes it and takes its quantum and distorts its encryption and drags it into a different expansion. And it cuts it off from its core connection, because all the Cathara grids at their top connect into either the next level up on a spiral rotation or to a center point in the center of a probability system. So literally the Metatronic harness is meant to cut probability systems' energy flows off and drag them into alignment with the black hole. So the living system that's still inside can be used as food by the black hole in order to be able to have quantum, for that black hole to have quantum, so it can maintain its particle spin. Because if it goes to a certain point of its own quantum being spent in its own spin, it will implode and then explode and go back as space dust. So that's what it's all about. It's the space dust game. They've created this technology. It's a black hole technology in order to not have to meet the consequences of their actions. Their actions are what caused them to go, their systems to go into fall in the first place. So anyway, that's the Metatronic spiral harness there, and that is the natural crystal spiral there. These occur in round 1. Just like the crystal spiral unfolds, round 1 goes to here, and then these to here, and then these two, when it goes, this would start round 2 to round 2 axis 1, right? So it's actually in round 1 that this harness emerges. This happens even, we've talked about it even in relation to the growth of a fetus in the womb, where there's a certain point in the gestation cycle that the mutation kicks in, and it actually spirals backward to earlier and then forward, and it changes the natural growth structure of the human body while it's even still in the womb. But in relation to cosmoses and universes and galaxies and things, it literally harnesses those natural creation spirals. And remember, the natural creation spirals had those backflows where they would spiral out, the big one would spiral out, and then smaller step-down currents would spiral out. And then there were those backflow points where there's always a circulation and exchange of energy through those spirals with the core creation point, and that would connect you to the next level up, and that the expansions, the backflow and outflow there would connect you to the next level up until you were directly and openly connected to God's source consciousness field, an open living connection to the eternal living God source consciousness field. This spiral, it actually hijacks those natural creation spirals and bends them in an unnatural configuration, reverses portions of their polarity alignments in their encryption, and makes it so they can only circulate, which means they're finite. What was infinite, because it circulated back and forth through the eternal God source consciousness field. The crystal spiral is eternal because, first of all, it can spark its own currents. It can generate its own quantum. It also circulates back and forth between the original God source consciousness field, which is alive and always will be, and the systems built within that consciousness field. But this is intended to take living things and make them finite. And in relation to our galaxy and the Milky Way, it is these technologies that created the fall of the Milky Way in the first place, and from the Andromeda system. Next one, please. So we'll look a bit more at the spirals, the comparisons, in a little bit. Now here, just looking at the maps a little bit more, where this is just showing more of a close-up, where over here, where are we? We have, this is our location in, I think this is our, I'm trying to find Vecca numbers here. Where am I? I think this is, yeah, Vecca 5. All right, so this is Vecca 5. This is an enlargement of the other thing, so you can see the Vecca bigger, right? So you have Vecca 5, and this is showing the M31 galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy fragment, I think, yeah. And actually, the Milky Way is what is considered a fragment megagalaxy, or metagalaxy. So a metagalaxy has 6 smaller probable versions of itself that are considered part of it. And they're our local group, actually. The beloveds would actually consider those part of the Milky Way because they consider it a metagalaxy. All right, so anyway, we are, let's see, Milky Way galaxy, okay, over here. Now, this is Vecca 5, the line that would connect to the center of, into Vecca 5. And this is Vecca 5, right? This circle here, this big one. So this is Vecca 5. This line here is just showing the connection to the natural structure of the Cathara grid, which is the radiation encryption that a universe is built on, right? This should come in and align with the core, our Vecca core, at that angle. That's the natural structure. And that is the structure that M31 Andromeda actually still maintains. It's not a fall system. It's got some of its parts are falling, but its main structure is not falling. It's not a falling universe. But here, this Cathara grid here would represent one of the probable versions of the Andromeda system, our home galaxy. This system here at this funny angle, it's actually supposed to be a 23.5 degree tilt over here between these two, is actually a split. A portion of the quantum of this galaxy, of the M31, was actually split off over a very long period of time, and it became what we know as the Milky Way galaxy. So the Milky Way core would be there, and the Andromeda core would be there. In this map, they sit as they rotate, because as the metagalactic probabilities rotate, you would have the Milky Way down here, and when you're on this side of it, you have the Milky Way down here and the M31 up here. So you have M31 Andromeda and the Milky Way fragment, where they're rotating together, but the fragment is offset. So it creates, it's literally running on a space-time distortion system that is controlled by the black hole systems. And our Earth is in there. I mean, we've got the Vecca 5 alignment, and inside of the Vecca we're in metagalactic 6, and inside of that we're moving into galaxy 3. But all of those systems are still plugged into the Milky Way galaxy, the Milky Way that that science knows that we are a part of. The Milky Way galaxy is still in that tilted configuration, which means it is running in a space-time distortion loop. And that loop is going to close progressively. In 200 years, our galaxy gates will close, which means that whole system will be finally consumed by that Metatronic spiral, and it will be pulled into black hole alignment. It doesn't mean it's all going to go kaboom in 200 years. It means the gates that allow the natural crystal spirals to outflow and backflow will be permanently closed. And that means the consciousness that is within those fields, within the Milky Way, after that point, will not have ascension as an option. They will have space dust return eventually as the only option of getting back home. And that's why it is a big deal. I mean, this has been going on for billions of years, and we are at the end times of the Milky Way cycle as far as it has reached critical mass of fall alignment. And that's why our teams are keeping the gates open. It is the last call, basically, the next 200 years to keep the gates open so the crystal spirals consciousness can ride them up and out of here before the gates close. So this is showing where our Milky Way is. This is a little thing from a science book that shows here's our Milky Way and some various other things, various other little galaxies. Andromeda, I believe, is here. That's the Andromeda galaxy, and they have them on like stalks, in this grid just to like show relationship. Okay, our galaxy is here. Where are these? These are all considered in our local group, and that would be considered in our metagalaxy. All right, so we have the Milky Way and Andromeda, and we have the Milky Way and Andromeda in relation to the maps. These maps get a bit more detailed, and I think it was in the Andromeda workshop, not yet, the Amsterdam workshop that I went into a bit more on. Andromeda workshop, wishful thinking, me. Oh. Not yet, but soon, hopefully. Anyway, the black hole at Milky Way core, right? The black hole at Milky Way core is actually here. This is the metagalactic core. This is the Milky Way core. So and there would be one of these on each of the versions of the Milky Way. So we have probable Milky Way galaxies and probable Milky Way metagalaxies. There's probable reality systems, and this gets into a lot like some of the movies and sci-fi you see, like Doctor Who and stuff on TV, where they're flipping back and forth through time and different reality fields. And sometimes you have there's Earth, then there's parallel Earth. There's not just one parallel Earth. There's many, many, many parallel Earths, because there's many, many, many parallel galaxies and those kind of things. There's parallel, there's adjacent, there's harmonic twins, there's transharmonic twins. There are so many different versions that it's really interesting. It's like if you met a version of yourself, even if it was a direct version of this body, you might not even recognize yourself. If we went to a different version of Earth, just like literally through a gate and over, it might look like a completely different place. It might look like a place that wasn't totally abused by the people who lived on it, for example. Like when we go to higher Earth, even though that's right here with us at a different plane, a set of planes that are beyond the net, it is pristine by comparison to what has happened here. They are not having water shortages. They have not contaminated their planet in the way that has happened here. So anyway, there are probable reality systems, and they are formed by this invisible structure. The structure is invisible. I think you would probably have to be God's source consciousness field itself to be able to perceive the cosmic levels of the structure within yourself, because we are within them. So it's kind of like hard to see what it looks like, what you're a part of when you're inside of it. It's kind of like hard to see what's outside of the egg when you're inside of the egg, kind of thing. So anyway, this is showing that these maps do plug in to what is known scientifically as far as, what's out there in the galaxy and all of that. And this is they call it the golden mean spiral, or the Fibonacci spiral, or the Metatronic Death Star spiral. That is the structure of the spiral. This inside of it is an expansion ratio formula. It's called the golden mean rectangle, where it's an expansion, literally. And we'll look at it a little closer. There's a number expansion that is the Fibonacci sequence that expands with this form. And this is an unnatural creation structure. It is a creation structure that requires sucking the life force off living structures that were born out of the Krystal eternal life structures. Next one, please. Yeah, these are just more of those maps. Yeah, we covered these. This is sliders 4 or 5, but this we were getting, doing more close-ups to see what is what. I just wanted to touch on this, where it's showing where we have to make our. We analyzed this quite well in I think was this sliders 4 or 5? Hon, do you remember? 4. Yeah. Where we talked about the great crossover, and I think we started talking about this in April, because that's when we had to do the great crossover into Metagalactic 6, where we started to trace the alignments that actually have to be made, what spirals we have to align with by 2012 to not get pulled into the Metatronic spiral loop in 2012. So we analyzed that before. Over here, you've got this area here is referred to the Dragon's Eye, which takes you right into the fall systems over in the parallel Vecca, and it all connects through the core of the Milky Way and the metagalactic core. These are all the wormhole systems, and this is how we're going to get our host through through where we don't get dragged into them because of the connection to Andromeda, M31 Andromeda Galaxy. And it's through those gates that the Aquarian matrix from way up in that other area that we saw in the large echo maps actually runs through M31 to reach us. So this is how our host is going. What's important, most important about this part here is, and you can read this, because it's in the Sliders 4 set, but it'll also be in this one. So if you haven't read them, you can see this much of it here. This is the alignment that, and this would be the drum codes that we're going to be using in 2012, well, like December 2012, right, where we're going to move from where we are now, which is Metagalactic 6, moving into Galactic 3. We're moving into Galactic 3, and we're in Solar System 3 right now, and we're Stellar 3, which means Planet 3. In relation to that solar system. Okay, so right now we have the MG6, GL3, SS3, and ST3 positions. We're going to move in December 2012. We're going to begin that move through that Amareya pass-through into Metagalactic 12, Galactic 12, Solar System 5, because that aligns over here someplace. If I could see where I'm doing over here, it aligns in a way that it allows for the influence of Eartha, which is our counterpart planet in star. Actually, it's a star planet in M31, where Eartha will be able to hold our Earth, our Earth's rod and what they call the rod and staff, from going into roll. And that is that alignment that must take place in 2012 when the Metatronic thing hits, because they hit its 55, peak spin. We need to go into that alignment, and we will use the Amareya pass-through to do that, which implies we have to have the monadic passage from Atori side and Adori side, and the Adashi flows that correspond with those to open by 2012. And this is the alignment that we're working. This is the alignment that we need to go into, and the way we will go into it are the activations that they're showing us now that have to do with the crystal spirals and catching and anchoring those crystal spirals. All right, next one, please. This is just looking a little bit more closely at this is just the Atori side, the clockwise crystal spiral. And this is showing you how its expansion rate and its shape and the axes, right? It starts at the 0 axis, so it goes axis 0, axis 1, axis 2, axis 3, axis 4, axis 5, axis 6, axis 7, axis 8, 0, 8, back to 0 again, right? That would be round 1, all right? That's just showing you how that forms. And then this would be the first movement in round 2. Right, so that corresponds, those axes correspond to the 8 delineations between the octants, to form the 8 octants, the delineation lines between them. All right, when we look at this is the Fibonacci spiral, and it doesn't have this one doesn't have the number in, but I don't know if the other one does. I had the numbers in here. This is the 55 block. That level of expansion is 55, and I forget it goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, something like that. So anyway, I don't have the numbers in here yet because we were running out of time as I was getting to this point. I was just trying to get the basics done. But when you put these two together, this shows just a little more closely where they overlap. Could you move this up, honey, please? Thank you. Okay, now the Cathara grid shape, right? That is you don't see the bottom. The bottom's not on there because it was too big. So that would be the normal crystal spiral, right? As it was up there, it's showing, its expansions. It's actually the inside one, right? So that's the crystal spiral. Now, right here at axis 6, this is axis 5 or axis 6. At axis 6, this starts to, the harness field starts to actually exert pressure on and begin to pull on the crystal spiral. And through this, and I forget what octant it is, I have to look back at the octant chart, but from axis 6 to axis 7, it continues to pull itself closer to the crystal spiral until it interfaces with it right in through here at axis 7. And this is where it bends it, where the crystal spiral never gets to go to finish a complete round, right? Because it gets hijacked before it completes round 1. Now, this gets interesting because this is activating in the planetary grids and in the solar system grids and in the galaxy's grids. All right. So, when we jumped into metagalactic 6, we actually jumped past the core cycle. The activations that we were doing, the beloveds actually didn't have us start at 0 point because we would have got run over before we got started. They began opening certain parts of the Adashi flows. We came in on axis 2, round 2, which means we came in octant 1. We entered metagalactic 6 in April of 2009 at the octant 1 start, which is round 2, axis 2. So that's where we actually came into the cycle, which means we haven't run into it yet. When we take these into the time breakdowns between now and 2012, we'll find, here's our axis 4. That's right where we're coming into. Axis 4 is where the monadic passage, that's the center of the Torium monadic passage, right? That's where the Amareya pass-through should open after you get the axis 6 Adore monadic passage open. It's right in here that influence starts to happen, where the Metatronic spiral pulls itself closer and it starts pulling on the crystal spiral. Right? So we need to not get caught in the lower spiral. We need to break through. There's part of the current, the creation currents here, are going to run this way. We jumped in past it, but we still have to go around on round 2 around it, and if we don't hold the activations, first of the monadic passage and then of this monadic passage, it will actually drag us back down into the vibration pattern or the encryption pattern of round 1, and it will drag us into the Metatronic reversals just like the rest of the energy that is harnessed there. So that's a challenging period for us it shouldn't be too bad as long as we activate the monadic passage. We're doing the first activation of that while we are here, and the next 2 workshops we'll finish that, and then we can move through, and there's the time period when this happens, and I have no idea what kind of workshop they're going to have for that, but that's a pretty big point here and here when that interface is occurring, when we're trying to go around it, in the next round out, but we're going to be passing right through it. And if we don't hold those frequencies from the passages, from the monadic passages, we will get sucked down into the harness, even though we emerged above it before, and we'll be pulled down into this one that's going to go that way. And that's when the gates would close, and we wouldn't have 200 years left of the load-out ascension cycle. But the beloveds assure us that isn't going to happen. They're very happy with the fact that there's enough people on this planet who care and who go through they know it isn't easy, this process. It's not easy for Asan and myself and Mac to do our parts of our job as speakers. It's a very strange job on this planet. It's in general, it's very strange to say, what do you do? I'm a speaker. What is that? Never mind. Right? Those things. But it's your job, too. You've been, excuse me, the people who come to these workshops, this is hard work. I mean, you're sitting up as long as certain parts of the Adashi flows. We came in on axis 2, round 2, which means we came in octant 1. We entered metagalactic 6 in April of 2009 at the octant 1 start, which is round 2, axis 2. So that's where we actually came into the cycle, which means we haven't run into it yet. When we take these into the time breakdowns between now and 2012, we'll find, here's our axis 4. That's right where we're coming into. Axis 4 is where the monadic passage, that's the center of the Torium monadic passage, right? That's where the Amareya pass-through should open after you get the axis 6 Adore monadic passage open. It's right in here that influence starts to happen, where the Metatronic spiral pulls itself closer and it starts pulling on the crystal spiral. Right? So we need to not get caught in the lower spiral. We need to break through. There's part of the current, the creation currents here, are going to run this way. We jumped in past it, but we still have to go around on round 2 around it. And if we don't hold the activations, first of the monadic passage and then of this monadic passage, it will actually drag us back down into the vibration pattern or the encryption pattern of round 1. And it will drag us into the Metatronic reversals, just like the rest of the energy that is harnessed there. So that's a challenging period for us to. It shouldn't be too bad as long as we activate the monadic passage. We're doing the first activation of that while we are here. In the next 2 workshops, we'll finish that, and then we can move through, and there's the time period when this happens, and I have no idea what kind of workshop they're going to have for that, but that's a pretty big point here and here when that interface is occurring, when we're trying to go around it, in the next round out, but we're going to be passing right through it. And if we don't hold those frequencies from the passages, from the monadic passages, we will get sucked down into the harness, even though we emerged above it before, and we'll be pulled down into this one that's going to go that way. And that's when the gates would close, and we wouldn't have 200 years left of the load-out ascension cycle. But the beloveds assure us that isn't going to happen. They're very happy with the fact that there's enough people on this planet who care and who go through they know it isn't easy, this process. It's not easy for Asan and myself and Mac to do our parts of our job as speakers. It's a very strange job on this planet. It's in general, it's very strange to say, what do you do? I'm a speaker. What is that? Never mind. Right? Those things. But it's your job, too. You've been, excuse me, the people who come to these workshops, this is hard work. I mean, you're sitting up at bizarre hours, listening to stuff. Some of it's so technical, just a bang, zoom, over the head. I don't know what that meant. I know that feeling. I feel that way when the wave's coming through and I'm trying to catch it on paper, to teach. So everybody has done an amazing job to get us this far, and the beloveds really appreciate it. And that goes out to the people who have been here, that aren't in this workshop, but have been in other ones as well. You're making a huge difference. The picture is so big that most people on the planet just don't get it. Completely don't get the scope of it. It's like very myopic. I think that means short-sighted, doesn't it? Right? We have a much bigger picture that we're looking at and dealing with. So this is what we are going to do our best to avoid, and as long as we have the monadic passage fulfillment here on the Otori side, when we go through the time period associated with that axis, we will have enough strength to not get drawn in when we go into these axes. And if we make it through that activation, we'll have enough strength not to get sucked in when it goes for its real pull, because it's an acceleration in the currents that creates that pull in, and it literally, you wouldn't see this one going up there. It would actually be harnessed, and the quantum would be taken off in the different direction in the alignment of the fall spirals. So it's about building quantum, so we have enough quantum on the crystal spiral to not get sucked in at the crossover point where the harness field drags, begins the accelerated drag. And it's over here that the 55 activation would occur. So this is the stages before the 55 activation. So I can hardly wait to see what the 55 is going to look like. But they assure us not to be frightened, because we have the antidote, or the beloveds have the antidote, and we are working with it. All right, next one, please.